Good morning, everybody. So glad you could join us. This is life safety systems for strata corporations. We're specifically going to be looking at fire alarm systems, fire safety planning, and fire safety directorships for condominium style buildings. Brief agenda here for us to all follow along with. So we're going to have a high-level discussion about these things. So fire alarm systems, code compliance, and risk management. We're going to look at fire alarm system basics, code compliant inspection and testing, responsibility for life safety, ensuring code compliance in your building, fire safety plans, fire safety directors, volunteers and professionals, which one should you be using? And we've got a lot to cover, so let's start with a quick overview of who I am. So I am the principal of Artemis Fire Consulting. We've been involved in the fire safety industry of Victoria for just shy of 30 years now. We've started as an Underwriters Laboratories of Canada certified service company, providing annual inspections, testing, and maintenance for fire alarm systems. We then became certified by ULC for the verification of newly installed, altered, and upgraded fire alarm systems. In 2004, we became general contractors for the upgrade of and installation of fire alarm systems in existing buildings, and we have completed over 100 buildings in Greater Victoria. In 2017, we began shifting into fire alarm system consulting and design, which is now our primary focus. So we help stratas evaluate their current systems and walk them through the pre-engineering and engineering phases, and either provide general contracting for the project or oversee installation of as their technical representatives. This model is based on our belief that an engaged owners group um, needs to make informed decisions that place their needs at the forefront, especially ones that will affect everything from the cost, both for the installation and future maintenance, and also to the future service provider choices and the final aesthetics in their building. We realize that stratas, by their very nature, need more support, especially in the area of life safety within their buildings. So this is the basis for this presentation. The more knowledge you have leads to more and better decisions. So let's start at the beginning. Which buildings are required to have a fire alarm system? This is governed by the BC Building Code, which states that a fire alarm system shall be installed in a building that is not sprinklered throughout and that contains more than 3 stories, including the stories below the first floor, and residential occupancy with sleeping accommodations for more than 10 persons, which would work out for the average building to say 5 suites with 1 bedroom each, or 4 suites with 2 bedrooms each. It's basically based on the number of people, and they look at it as 2 people per bedroom. And this will apply to most people's buildings that were constructed pre-1998. Any building that doesn't have a sprinkler system but meets the requirements listed above. I have cherry-picked just the ones that apply to residential buildings, but there is a longer list of who is required to have a fire alarm system. Fire alarm system is also required in any building with an automatic sprinkler system. So whether you have a wet system, meaning the pipes have water in them all the time, or a dry system where the pipes are filled with air until water is released when the system is tripped. This is because we have to have a way to monitor sprinklers for non-emergency water flow, and when they are activated in an emergency, a way to notify everyone in the building that a sprinkler head is releasing water. So what are we referring to when we talk about life safety systems? We sometimes interchangeably use the terms life safety system and fire alarm system, which is actually just one of the life safety systems in a building. While this list outlines what is included in a fire alarm system, it doesn't cover all life safety systems, which would also include things like emergency light units and fire extinguishers. All life safety related systems and equipment in the building must be inspected and tested on a regular, ongoing basis, and at a minimum on a monthly and annual basis, as per the BC Fire Code and its reference standards. In this list that I've shown here, the 5 items listed immediately under fire alarm panel or fire alarm and annunciator panels all represent devices or systems that are interconnected to the fire alarm control panel itself and will either be initiate an alarm on the panel or will activate the signal devices upon initiation of the alarm. So the devices include 3 different headings initiating devices, which include heat and smoke detectors, as well as pull stations, notification devices such as bells, horns, speakers, ancillary devices. These are devices that are attached to the fire alarm system, but are not part of the fire alarm system. Can include all kinds of things there, like fire alarm shutdowns, magnetic door holders, such. And then there's the fire sprinkler system, which is technically also considered an ancillary system as well. So let's start with fire alarms panels. All of these various devices are connected to a fire alarm panel, control panel, which is the main brain of the fire alarm system. Depending on the age of your building, there are a range of fire alarm panels that you may see, especially if it was built pre-1990. The panels range from the simplest three-wire systems like the Pack Pro system over here on the left, which is essentially a couple of batteries in a box, to the earliest motherboard systems such as the fire light system over on the right. In larger buildings, the Edwards 6500 Custom was popular as additional cards could be added to expand the system. So I've seen buildings that have like 165 units that will have something like this with maybe two panels side by side. They're quite huge. However, most of the older pre-2000 fire alarm systems are now obsolete, and many are starting to fail. The manufacturers are no longer creating or carrying parts or offering any support for these systems. Whatever parts can be found will often be secondhand and cannibalized out of older systems where one major component may have failed, but the smaller parts can be saved. And they're often coming from eBay, frighteningly enough, which provides no guarantee of the operability of the system. If you're at this point where your service provider is simply keeping your system on life support with used parts, it is past time when you should be evaluating the risks and begin planning for your fire alarm upgrade. Of special concern are the Pack Pro and other three-wire panels from the 1970s. Short of when you are actively testing them, there is no guarantee that they are operating correctly. In the case of the Pack Pros, the manufacturer-approved batteries haven't actually been manufactured for over a decade, and most service providers are using batteries that are not sanctioned for this panel. Some service providers have gone so far as to install other non-approved equipment into the panel, such as the noted charger that is plugged into the wall beside the panel, turning them into what we call Franken panels, which are not covered by ULC or insurance. Your annual report from both the fire department and your service provider may read that they recommend, in quotes, that these panels be replaced as soon as possible. No, that's not an order, but it is placing full liability on your shoulders should the system fail. Now let's look at all of the devices that form part of a fire alarm system. As I said before, we break devices down into three categories. We have activation, indication, and ancillary. So each of these need to be installed per the BC Building Code and the governing installation standards. The first set are detection, and these include heat detectors, which are to be installed in storage and service rooms, specifically not within a dwelling, janitor rooms, rooms in which hazardous materials are used or stored, elevator hoistways and dumbwaiter shafts, and laundry rooms in residential buildings, but not those within a suite, only the common laundry room. When you upgrade your fire alarm system in a non-sprinklered building, most electrical engineers and installers will also insist on installing a heat detector in each suite, as this will be the only device that will be attached to the fire alarm system and it will notify everyone in the building if your suite is on fire. Next are smoke detectors, which are installed in each public corridor or portion in a building, each exit stair shaft, and in the elevator machine rooms. The ones in the public corridor, the new code that just came out in 2024 actually requires the use of a different kind of smoke detector now that is slightly more sensitive. Next, of course, these are, local detection, so smoke alarms. These smoke detectors are not to be confused with smoke alarms, which are found inside of suites and only sound within that individual suite. Per the BC Building Code, they're required in each bedroom and in the hallway immediately outside of the bedrooms. They are also required to be interconnected so that if one goes off, they all sound. Smoke detectors, when activated, will set off the building-wide horns or bells. Smoke alarms will not. And lastly, for activation devices, the well-known pull station, which needs to be located at every designated exit from the building. Recent changes in the building code now require these to be located about 1,050 to 1,150 millimeters, or 41 to 45 inches for those of us who still do imperial, from the floor to increase accessibility. Secondly, we have notification devices, which will alert residents of an emergency situation. The current building code requires adequate notification both in the common areas and in suites. We'll start with the common areas first. We're all familiar with the traditional bells shown in the picture. Challenge with them, though, is that they don't often provide the code-required decibel levels inside of suites, meaning folks in the far end of the hall or whose bedrooms weren't close to the bells often couldn't hear them at all. In common areas now, the current code mandates the use of horn strobes, which these pictures show two different kinds, in all hallways and service rooms to ensure that those with hearing impairments would still be aware of the need to evacuate. In common areas, the system must be able to provide a minimum of 65 decibels over the ambient sound level in the building. So if you live close to a construction site, your need for sound level is going to be higher than somebody who lives in the quiet neighborhood. When we kind of start talking about in-suite devices, the building code has for many years now required that all suites must achieve a minimum decibel reading of 75 decibels over ambient sound in the bedrooms and 65 decibels in all other areas. So with the code update in 2024, it also became a requirement that all bedrooms must have low frequency horns, which are easier for people to hear and more likely to wake them up at night. In order to fulfill the code requirements, we install notification devices in the main living area, as well as in each bedroom to ensure that the decibel levels can be achieved. Mini horns, the little devices on the left-hand side there, have been used for many years to achieve the code requirements of both the decibel level and the requirement to give homeowners the ability to silence the mini horns in their suites. You'll see that the white one here has a little button that you can push to silence the horns. With the increasing computerization of fire alarm panels, many of these systems provide automatic signal silencing now directly from the panel, negating the need for that silence button in the suites. This has led to the use of horns on the right-hand side in suites, which can provide the low frequency sound instead of the smaller mini horns, which are very loud and quite high. If you live in a higher building over 11 stories tall, you would be having to install speakers, which are required to be connected to a dedicated communication system that allows arriving fire personnel to talk with and direct residents. And our final component is the fire alarm ancillary devices, which are extra components or relays that are attached to and work with the main system for fire life safety, but are not part of the fire alarm system itself. They include a long list of items which perform tasks like releasing locks, venting smoke, guiding elevators, or notifying hearing impaired people when an alarm triggers. Not all buildings will need to have these devices, but when you do, they must be interconnected with the fire alarm system and their correct operation confirmed by integrated system testing on a scheduled basis. We'll get into more of that shortly. A common ancillary device found in some buildings is an electromagnetic door holder, also known as a door mag, which release the electromagnet, this part right here, that holds open the fire door until the alarm is initiated. When the alarm sounds, they trigger closure of those doors. This prevents the transfer of smoke and fire between zones on a floor while providing the convenience of not having hallway doors closed all the time. Another common ancillary device is integration of the firefighter emergency operation and elevator homing to ground floor. In the event of an emergency, elevator will return to home and shut down until overridden by the use of the firefighter key inside the elevator. And the most common ancillary device that is tied into the fire alarm system is the sprinkler system. In this case, sprinkler heads are acting as independent activation devices, triggering the flow of water while simultaneously activating the fire alarm system to notify everyone that there's an emergency situation. The fire alarm system also acts as a monitor for the correct operation of the sprinkler system by watching for situations like low air on a dry sprinkler system or leaks on a wet system. It also ensures that if anyone tampers with the sprinkler valves, the trouble signal will activate on the panel so people can take action to fix problems. So if you've ever wandered into your sprinkler room, you may have seen little devices like this. Those are the tamper switches, and if you try to mess around, it will let the panel know. So once your building has attained an occupancy permit after construction or alteration, its future maintenance is governed by the BC Fire Code. All of the life safety systems in your building are required to be inspected, tested, and maintained on a regular basis. The code references many different standards that then spell out exactly how and how often those systems must be inspected and tested, and what the reports must include. The cost for inspection testing of all the life safety equipment in the building can range in price depending on the size and complexity of the building and the systems. Often, buildings spend more on their gardening and janitorial services on an annual basis than they do on the maintenance of their life safety systems. This is a standard operating expense that can be planned for, and it should be understood that this testing is both code required and helps to protect everyone who comes into the building, which means that while owners can make decisions about who will service their systems, provided they have a non-proprietary system that does not lock them into one service provider, they cannot decide not to have the system serviced, repaired, or upgraded without potentially incurring serious legal consequences. Most folks don't realize the full scope of required testing, inspection, and maintenance. For example, your fire alarm system requires not just annual inspections, but also monthly testing as well as daily inspections. This is all included in the CAN ULC S536 standard for the inspection and testing of fire alarm systems, which is referenced by the BC Building Code. Some folks take this monthly work on in-house with a resident acting as a volunteer, and some have their service provider in on a monthly basis. The average cost for a monthly test of the fire alarm system and some life safety systems, such as emergency lights and extinguishers, as required by the BC Fire Code, ranges between about $50 and $200, depending on the service provider. Some systems require even more frequent testing. So sprinkler systems, whether wet or dry, are one of the most inspection-intensive systems to have on site and must only be serviced by and maintained by qualified sprinkler fitters, unless you want to have a sudden water release. Very few people realize that integrated system testing of your ancillary devices and their connection to the fire alarm system is required by both the BC building and fire codes. Municipalities are starting to enforce this, even though it's been on the books for years now, requiring it to be completed just prior to occupancy as a final sign-off that all ancillary systems and interconnections, which we discussed earlier, are correctly integrated with the fire alarm system and operational. It is then required again during the annual inspection on the first year after occupancy and then every 5 years after that. If you have never had this testing done, you are still required to have it done, as it applies equally to new and existing buildings. To be clear, this is not about rubber stamping the other verification and annual reports. The integrated system testing coordinator must design the testing parameters per the applicable standards and ensure that they review all documentation line by line and conduct any additional testing required. This must be conducted by a qualified professional, and there are very few of them. As well as your annual service provider, you will have your annual visit from the fire department in your municipality. Their visit may be minimal or in-depth, depending on the district, and the report may or may not ask that additional testing or work be undertaken on site. Most do at least a cursory check on the building to make sure that the annual inspection report by the service provider has been completed and that the reports are on site. Some will check to the oft ignored fire safety plan box at the front door to see if the fire safety plan has been updated in the last decade. I'm not kidding here. And please note your last two annual reports should be in the back of your fire safety plan, not sitting in your property manager's inbox. A lot of folks believe that once the annual inspections by their service provider and fire department are complete, that they are scot-free, and that the recommendations on either report are optional at best. After all, they aren't listed as deficiencies, so you're not required to address them. You might have had the recommendation to upgrade your obsolete fire alarm system now show up on reports for years, but no one is ordering you to do it, so you're covered, right? The truth is that both the BC building and fire codes make it crystal clear that unless otherwise specified in this code, the owner of a building shall be the person responsible for carrying out the provisions of this code in relation to that building. And supplementally, that the owner of the building is in no way relieved of full responsibility for complying with this code by any authority having jurisdiction. That would include your fire department and building department, whether they are granting you a permit, approving drawings or specifications, or carrying out inspections. Every single owner in the building is 100% responsible for ensuring that building and fire codes are carried out. And that includes inspection, testing, maintenance, repair, and replacement when required. So bearing that responsibility in mind, let's talk more about the BC Fire Code, which governs your building's life safety systems after installation. As mentioned earlier, all inspection and testing requirements are governed by the supporting documents adopted by the BC Fire Code, including standards documents from the Underwriters Laboratories of Canada, the National Fire Protection Association, and the Canadian Standards Association, to name a few. The various standards created by these organizations govern the installation, testing, inspection, and maintenance of all life safety systems and their integration with other ancillary systems within the building. This is a good starting list of the standards that the BC Fire Code references for the inspection, testing, and maintenance of life safety systems in the average building. These are also the basic documents that trained supervisory staff, also known as fire safety directors and deputy directors, need to be familiar with in order to fulfill their role. We'll talk more about fire safety directors in just a bit, but for those who do want to read up, Underwriters Laboratories of Canada does provide free access to the documents that I've referenced at the top here, the inspection and testing of fire alarm systems, as well as the inspection, testing, and maintenance of smoke alarms. So, given the depth and scope of the fire code and all of the standards, how does a council ensure that they are complying with the code requirements? These 5 steps to compliance form part of the basic responsibilities of the fire safety director and deputy director, although the last of knowing your insurance coverage would mostly likely fall to the council. The 5 steps include step 1, updating your fire safety plan annually and more often if needed. Number 2, having a familiarity with the codes and standards. Number 3, keeping copies of the 2 most recent years of reports and repair records in your fire safety plan book. 4, having trained fire safety directors and deputy directors. And 5, knowing what's covered and not by your insurance policy. Let's run through these one at a time. Step 1, all buildings that have a fire alarm system are required to have a fire safety plan per the emergency planning section of the BC Fire Code. So what you need to do is create a thorough fire safety plan that is customized for your building and your unique needs and update it annually per the fire code requirements. Make sure you update the persons in need of assistance or protecting in place sheet anytime someone's ability to respond to an emergency or evacuate the building changes. This includes adding and removing people who may have undergone recent surgeries but who later recover, as well as those whose abilities are diminishing over time. Ensure that the list is dynamic and responds to the ongoing changes in the building. Put new copies in the fire safety plan so that the most recent information is available to arriving first responders. Keep the annual inspection and repair reports for the 2 most recent years in the plan book. But also keep in mind that as a strata, you are required to keep all paperwork related to your life safety systems for the life of the system. Only dispose of old reports once you've replaced the specific system. For example, your fire alarm system. Do be sure to update the fire safety plan book when you engage and train new fire safety directors and deputy directors. And it's also important that you send an updated copy of your plan to your local fire department whenever changes are made. So if that person's in need of assistance sheet is changing, send an update of that to your fire department. Step 2, read the applicable parts of the BC Building of Fire Codes, as well as the CAN-ULC and NFPA standards that apply to your life safety systems, to ensure that any required inspection, testing, or maintenance is performed by a reputable company with properly trained technicians and/or by trained and insured on-site volunteers. Keep in mind that there is no provincial or national standard in place for the qualification or certification of fire alarm technicians. Let me say that again. There are no provincial or national standards for the qualification or certification of fire alarm technicians. Only 24 out of the 160 municipalities in British Columbia have set the standard that you must either be certified by ASTTBC, which is the Applied Science Technologists and Technicians of British Columbia, or you must be registered with the CFAA, which is the Canadian Fire Alarm Association. Thankfully, this, cross my fingers, is going to change in the next year or so. Until that time, become familiar with reporting requirements so that you can tell from the report whether you've gotten a complete inspection. For example, CAN-ULC S536, which is the standard for inspection and testing of fire alarm systems, has very specific reporting requirements, including that the documents must not be reworded or revised in order or format at all. A complete test record for a fire alarm system in all devices should be a minimum of 16 to 17 pages, with 19 total sections numbered from 20.1 through to 23.3. Section 23.2, the individual device record, will potentially have dozens of pages recording the testing required on every device attached to the fire alarm system. Your system is also required to be tested under CAN-ULC S536 2019 Revision 1. You'll see I've highlighted that on the slide. Standards, which should be clearly indicated that at the top on the first sheet of the report. If you are receiving a report that lists a different testing year, for example, 2013 or 2006, fewer than 17 pages, or whose numbering appears to have fewer or skipped sections, it's worth checking to see if you've received the full inspection and testing that is required by the code. A complete blank downloadable ULC compliant version of an annual inspection report can be viewed on our website. Please go get one and take a look at it. Step 3, ask for and keep copies of all life safety system related reports and repair records for the life of your equipment. Place the 2 most recent annual inspection reports and any repair reports in your fire safety plan for review by the fire department during their annual visit. Have that book out in your hands and push it into their hands to look at. Ensure that your service provider is filling in the ULC required technician attendance log during all visits to site. This tracking may be essential in the event of a discussion with your insurer and to ensure that deficiencies are being addressed in a timely manner. As previously noted, ensure that the reporting you're receiving is accurate and code compliant. Step 4, have your fire safety director and deputy properly trained and verified that they are fulfilling their code mandated duties. Supervisory staff, as the BC Fire Code refers to them, are required and must be trained before giving any responsibility for emergency planning in the building. Most stratas find it challenging to find a volunteer for this position, especially given the responsibilities, some of which we've just covered. The other question that stratas need to address is with their insurer to find out if their volunteers are covered for this position, as the standard CGL, directors and officers, and volunteers policy coverage often does not address these responsibilities. The other option is to outsource to a qualified company that has the education, experience, independence, and insurance for this specific role. We'll talk more about that later. And our final step is contact your insurer to discuss your policy and coverage for monthly testing of the life safety systems by volunteers, volunteers acting as fire safety directors, and your current fire alarm system and any recommendations that you may have received to upgrade your service, upgrade from your fire service provider or fire department. I know that most folks don't want to wake the sleeping lion, but it is significantly better to work with your insurer as a partner and have these conversations while you can still make proactive changes than to be starting a discussion after an emergency. Let's jump back now and talk in more depth about step one, which was to create or update your fire safety plan. So what is a fire safety plan? Primarily, it provides the emergency procedures to be used in case of fire and includes such things as the sounding of the fire alarm, notifying the fire department, giving emergency instructions to occupants, evacuating occupants, including people requiring assistance, and defining, controlling, and extinguishing a fire, which I do not encourage anyone to do unless you are trained. Many of you have seen the white metal box on the wall by your front door. Inside should be a book that tells both the owners and the fire department everything they need to know about this building and its life safety systems, as well as advice for owners on what to do in the event of emergency. While you can create one yourself, and the Fire Prevention Officers Association of BC provides a comprehensive free template, we don't recommend DIY when it comes to life safety. The fire safety plan is administered and implemented by supervisory staff, which is the term that the fire code uses to describe those who bear the title of fire safety director and deputy director. The fire code outlines their bare essential roles as directors, most of which we have covered, but we'll look at them in more depth in just a bit. As we've already mentioned, the directors must ensure that the fire safety plan is at minimum reviewed annually and any changes noted and submitted to the fire department. Most importantly, all supervisory staff must be trained in the fire emergency procedures before they take on the responsibility of being a director. So let's talk more about fire safety directors. We've outlined some of the responsibilities that they have to undertake in our discussions regarding the steps. But what do they actually do? They assess on-site risk and take proactive measures to protect people and property. That is the sum of their role. Now let's look at the full list of responsibilities that they're actually undertaking. So this is the start of the rather lengthy list of fire safety director responsibilities as taken from the fire safety plan template that was created by the Fire Prevention Officers Association of British Columbia. It is the standard which almost all fire safety plan providers work with and is used throughout the province. Though the first step is that they are responsible for administering and maintaining the fire safety plan, including updating it regularly, training of deputy fire safety directors, and recording information such as fire incidents, false alarms, fire drills, actual discharge or operation of fire equipment. So if you actually have an incident happen. They must also ensure that fire protection systems are inspected, maintained, and serviced in accordance with the plan and the fire code. They are also responsible for additional precautions being taken to offset hazards to occupants where fire protection equipment is inoperable. This could include such things as checking the plan, checking the fire safety plan and the fire code when the systems need repair, advising the fire department of the system's status, and if needed, instituting a fire watch, which means 24-hour patrol of the building to be able to notify residents in the event of an emergency situation, as long as the system is inoperable. They're also responsible for ensuring that building maintenance, alteration, or renovation does not expose the building or occupants to undue hazards and taking precautions, to ensure that building occupant safety is always foremost. And again, that includes checking the fire safety plan and fire code when such activities take place so that you can keep people safe in the building. Ensuring that supervisory staff are available to respond to the premises in the event of a notification of an emergency. Fire safety directors and deputy directors do not have to live on site. I mean, obviously, many people might volunteer and they have to go to work every day, but they do need to be available to respond to the site within about 30 minutes. They are also responsible for providing information to occupants on general life fire safety and evacuation procedures. Inside your fire safety plan book should be a section called Occupant Fire Prevention, Preparedness, and Control. This whole section can actually be just taken, copied, and sent to all people who live in the building. And it gives them an outline of what the expectations are of the Strata Council for life safety within the building. They also need to, of course, resolve any fire hazards which are reported by occupants, guests, or the fire department, and maintain familiarity with the building's fire protection systems. Additionally, they need to maintain a familiarity with the fire regulations, which includes obtaining, reviewing a copy of the BC Fire Code, ensuring that electrical rooms are not used for storage, ensuring that established policies are adhered to, and of course, retaining copies of all the different reports. They also have to take into consideration other emergency situations that could affect the building, such as earthquakes or natural gas leaks, and notify the alarm monitoring station if you have one when the emergency contacts change. So, as you see, the role of a fire safety director is a large responsibility, and it is not a position to be taken on lightly. So it really comes down to one question. Should owners be having volunteers taking on life safety testing and directorship in their buildings? And this is where I would encourage you to talk to your insurer. If you choose to use volunteers in your building, whether it be for monthly testing or as a fire safety director, you should be having an explicit discussion with your insurer about what is and isn't covered under your policy. So if you didn't want to do the monthly testing, who's going to do it? Well, many people are surprised to learn that monthly testing is actually required on a number of your life safety systems, including the fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, extinguishers, and emergency lights. We've mentioned that some folks and volunteers take on testing of life safety systems in their buildings, ostensibly to save money. So why would you use professionals for your monthly test work? In my opinion, professionals have insurance, education, and experience. Volunteers don't. It gives owners the peace of mind also that comes from knowing that professionals are specifically insured for the life safety industry and working on fire alarm or related life safety systems. This protects you in the event of an emergency, as you can easily show your insurance provider that you've done your due diligence and had your system professionally serviced and maintained. Professionals are trained in the operation, inspection, maintenance, and repair of fire alarm systems, and in many cases continue to upgrade their education through industry-specific training, classes, conferences, and manufacturer support. And most importantly to me, this will ensure that when equipment is needed, it is fully operational. Their experience in the industry far outweighs the risk of having a Strata volunteer undertake monthly testing, which, while simple to conduct, may leave the system compromised without your knowledge or ability to remedy. And what about fire safety directors? As we just learned, fire safety directorship is a huge undertaking and comes with serious responsibilities. Recently, the area of fire safety directorship and the limitation of liability for the responsibilities and duties inherent in the position has become an important topic. We are starting to see companies who are taking on the duties of fire safety directorship on behalf of owners, while remaining independent enough to provide meaningful oversight of the work that service providers undertake on site. So what should you be looking for in a fire safety directorship firm? Many of the same things you would look for in a service company. A good fire safety directorship company has a combination of experience, education, insurance, and independence. Their experience and education allows them to take on full scope of responsibilities for a building like yours because they know what they're looking at in terms of your equipment, the reports from your service provider, and any orders from the fire department. They're also intimately familiar with the codes and standards and have a firm background in fire alarm. They should be specifically insured for this work. This means that their insurer has reviewed the full list of fire safety director responsibilities and is providing them with the complete coverage for professional liability, errors and omissions, as well as contingent bodily injury and property damage liability. And lastly, and in our opinion, most importantly, they must have independence. What do we mean by that? They must be able to act as the owner's technical representative by taking on the duties of fire safety directorship and confirming that, number one, your service technicians are properly trained and are certified in the operation, inspection, and maintenance of your life safety systems. Two, you are receiving code compliant testing, inspection, repairs, and reports. And three, your owners are prepared in case of an emergency. They can also provide a level of continuity and consistency that volunteers simply can't. Council members change, owners move, and paperwork that is organized this year can easily fall prey to disorganization with a change in committee head. This can be easily overcome by having professionals managing the oversight of statutory life safety requirements. However, in the end, it's up to your owners group to decide based on your appetite for risk. Having outside service providers for monthly testing and fire safety directorship provides tangible benefits by reducing potential liability and risk, and more importantly, providing for life safety continuity, no matter who is running the council or providing property management over the years. Folks, I know that was a lot of information to take in, so my thanks to all of you for joining us today. This is the end of the presentation. I'll be taking your questions in just a moment. If you're looking for more information on anything I spoke about today, please check out our website at artemisfire.ca. We are always happy to talk about people's systems and life safety challenges they might be facing. You can reach us through our contact page online, via email at admin@artemis.ca, or giving us a call at the number on our website. And now I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
We have one question so far. It's a great
Okay.
question. Does anybody know why the fire safety plan, or sorry, fire safety plan is kept in a locked box? How are owners supposed to know what's in it?
Oh, that's a fine question. It's actually for the protection of the book. So the idea being that if there is a fire in the building, you want that book to survive. It is also put by the front door so that as the fire safety director or deputy director is running out the door, they can grab it, and or when the fire department arrives, they're going to wrench it open and they're going to pull that book out. Most Sorry, this is going to turn into a longer answer. Most of the time, what happens is when we create fire safety plans, like as a service provider myself, we send those to the fire department. Those documents then become the basis upon which they educate their people in their trucks as they're driving to the site. They can look at the floor plans, see what kind of equipment is on site. So, why is the book in a box? To keep it safe. That's a fire safety box that is fireproof.
So they'll break off the lock.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
If you haven't already grabbed that book on your way out the door, they will snap it open.
Um, Great question. Where can the training be found? And here I think the questioner is asking for training for our own strata owners. And she says, we met with our fire department and they're not able to do training, which
Okay, so I'm going to say it depends on what kind of training you're looking for. If you're looking for training uh, is that training to be able to use your system to know how the system works? The best people to talk to is actually your annual inspection service provider. If it is training to do the monthly inspection and testing, many companies will teach you how to, use a little teeny tiny screwdriver to work your pull station to take it down and turn it back up again to do the monthly testing. Um, and if it comes to sort of the fire safety directorship, that's a harder one to come by. Some places, even us as a fire safety plan provider, we will sit down and we will go through the book with you. And the book is the training program, essentially. The book tells you everything you need to know as a fire safety director. The question is whether somebody is going to sit down and read that 60 to 90 page book that can put you to sleep in a heartbeat. Um, but even with that, nobody's going to give you a certificate. Nobody's going to give you an award, or something that says you are now fully qualified. They're not going to do it. They're just going to say, we've reviewed this with you. So get a hold of your service provider.
Just in case anyone's never had a false alarm or an event, can you describe just briefly the process of the fire department has responded for whatever reason they arrive? How do they know who to contact? How do they get in the building?
That is going to come out of your fire safety plan. So in your fire safety plan, you will be providing a contact list of phone numbers of people that they can get a hold of. But you're also providing the fire safety director and deputy director contact information. Those are the first two people that they're going to try and get a hold of. If they can't reach one, they will try the other, and then they will continue down your list. But of course, if you have a false alarm, everything's going to be ringing every way. So somebody's going to be a person at least is going to go out that door. One little piece of important information that I will say, don't ever touch your fire alarm panel. If it's a false alarm, a real emergency, I don't care which, do not touch it. Even if the fire department is standing over you saying, you can reset your panel now, go, great, we'll call our service provider and have them do that.
Great question. If I understand correctly, something should be done every day in our building with regards to fire safety. So what would that look like?
Well, the minimum one is what we call the daily quick check on the fire alarm panel. So at minimum, that should involve you're going to have an annunciator panel at the front door or wherever your front entrance is. And that annunciator panel is a mirror to your fire alarm panel, but without all the brains. It's simply taking in the information that the fire alarm panel is showing it. If you look at either one, they should be identical. The only thing you should ever see lit up on there is the green power on light. So if you're seeing something else lighting up on that panel, then you could say, oh, there's a problem. And especially when it comes to, there's the challenge of, we were talking about the Pac Pro systems, for example. Their annunciator is going to be a little flat panel with just a bunch of little bulbs, stuck in little nipples that are sticking up out of the thing. If one of those light bulbs burns out, it actually can nullify that whole zone within the building because of how it's wired is the best way of putting it. So yeah, the quick check is basically you're making sure that the power is on. Another daily thing is means of egress, making sure there's not stuff piling up in doorways or on stairwells or that kind of stuff. A lot of it's just, and if you live in the building and you're bored, take a wander. But most people don't do the daily stuff.
Uh, let's put the fear in everyone. In your experience,
Oh,
you said that you've been involved with about 100 buildings with replacement,
over.
full replacement of fire alarm systems.
Yes.
Out of those, in your experience, how many of them had systems that were so old that you felt the people were at risk, the residents were,
All of them.
all of them?
All of them. Sorry, it's a fact. The trick is that when we're called in to do an upgrade, it's usually because people have already been warned that their systems are failing. A lot of people don't necessarily read their reports ever. They go to the property management company and they never see them after that. Um, but if there is ever a little thing that says we recommend, and fire departments will do it, and so will service providers, but you don't see that, or you go, yeah, but they're just recommending, they're not saying we have to, then all of a sudden you're left with, oh, our system failed. And we've had way too many stories of this. Our system failed. The other parts are not available. There are no parts available. And suddenly they have to make an emergency change. So that means either an emergency panel replacement, which is not inexpensive, but it's rare, especially with a lot of the older systems, that you can just replace the panel. Oftentimes, you have to upgrade the whole building. You can end up on Firewatch. So let's talk about Firewatch. Firewatch is having somebody walking through the building 24 hours a day to make sure that there's no fire and to notify residents. We had one building where that happened, and they had Firewatch. They decided to do it in-house, bless their hearts. They they were on Firewatch for 4 months, and they actually had people sleeping in their entryway of their, like on a cot in the entryway of their suites, to be close enough to the hallway to hear the bells because their in-suite notification had failed. And bless their hearts for doing it. But if they had to hire somebody to do that, the Corps of Commissioners charges $35 an hour times 24 times 7 times, yeah,
Been
it
there.
works tens of thousands. Yeah, you've been there. Sorry.
One last thing. I know we've kept you a long time, but one
Oh
last
no, that's
thing,
fine.
and this has come from experience too. Can you talk about the things that owners do in their suite that are against code? For example, sometimes people paint over
Mm.
devices. Can you explain
Mm.
that a bit?
Rule number one, if you're doing any painting in your building, whether it is in the suite or in the hallway, every device needs to be covered with a shower cap and taped to within an inch of its life. Especially when it comes to smoke detectors and heat detectors. When you get that fine particulate of paint in there, it can actually obscure its ability to do its job. So absolutely cover them over for the heaven's sake. Um, in most,
What
Go
I
ahead.
find too, I'll just interject, is that people don't like the look of those old horns, the cover plate sort of, so they just paint right over them so that they end up the same color as the wall.
No.
And the strata, of course, has to fork out the money to replace them because
Mhm.
you can't do
Because
that.
you've now damaged the device. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And don't take things off the wall. Don't remove things. If you're planning on renovating your suite and you need to move things, please have your strata call the fire alarm company to come in and do it for you. Don't just rip things off the wall, please.
Yeah.
Because you're just going to set off the system and then everybody's going to get unhappy.
And
Yeah.
cost money.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I want everyone to see your contact information one more
Oh,
time. Kathleen from Artemis Fire, thank you so much for spending your Saturday with us.
yeah.
I'll be sure to send you any questions that have trickled in now. But
Absolutely.
thank you everyone for joining us and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.